Why a lower return on ad spend at scale can actually mean more profits. How you doing, guys? Josh here from Brandpreneur, and welcome to a new video. And this is a very common discussion that I have with especially some of the newer clients. Obviously, the clients that we've been working with for a long time, they completely get this, they're completely on board with this. But I understand that when you've come from a agency that has promised you a sky-high return and spend a ROAS guarantee or anything like that, or you've just, you're relatively new to the space, I can understand that it's difficult to get your head around. So I'm hoping with this video that I can explain it as well as I can, just to kind of put this to bed as well, but also to inform you guys that the return on ad spend is a very easy metric to manipulate. So just be careful when you are working with an agency that is showcasing a specific return on ad spend, and they are all, trying to keep the ROAS as high as possible, and that could actually mean that you're losing out on a lot of money. So without rambling on too much, let's get into it. So as you can see here, scenario A, we've got $10 in ad spend, which of course, for example purposes, is an extremely low number, but just roll with it. We've made $100 in revenue, maybe we've generated one sale, and that is a return on ad spend of 10x. And that means that of the, we spent $10 and we've made $90 profit. How have we made $90 profit? Because obviously we've got $10 in revenue from the one sale, and of course we've got our ad costs, so that makes $90. And again, just really simplifying this because, just for the example, obviously when you have a sale through the ads, you've also got your cost of goods sold, etc. So let's just say, for example purposes, in this situation, we've got a 50% margin, which means that of the $100, $50 were cost, $50 were profits. So this is scenario A. Scenario B, we spent $2,000, we've made $10,000, and we've got a 5x return on ad spend. Now that is half of the return on ad spend of scenario A, right? But we have made $8,000 profit. How 8,000? Because we got 10,000 in revenue, 2,000 in spend. That 8,000 in profit is 89 times more than scenario A in terms of profit. However, the ROAS is exactly half. Now, if without showing you this equation, I would say to you, for your brand, would you like our agency to get you a 10x ROAS or a 5x ROAS? There's a very high likelihood that you'd say, okay, I'll go for the 10x ROAS, please. However, by seeing these numbers, you can see that scenario B, despite having half the return on ad spend, so not a 10x, but a 5x return on ad spend, you've made 89 times more. $8,000 profits, which also means $7,910 more than scenario A. Now, this is why I always say to clients, whether we work with those brands or not, be very careful with the metric return on ad spend, because it's basically just an equation. It's the difference between the revenue generated and the amount spent. It doesn't really make sense to follow ROAS when you're scaling up, because the profit is the most important thing. Simply put, if I had to, let's say, for example, Black Friday is around the corner at the time I'm recording this, and there's a client that says to me, hey, listen, for today, we need a 20x return on ad spend. We cannot get lower than 20x, which is obviously completely random, but let's just say, for argument's sake, there's someone that has kidnapped their daughter and they need a 20x return on ad spend, and if we don't get the 20x return on ad spend, then something very bad happens. What I would probably do in a situation like that is just drastically reduce the ad spend, maybe even turn off some of the campaigns. Why? Because we've spent a lot of money on the front end, to get the traffic in. If I now turn off the ads or I lower the ad spend, we've already accumulated that traffic, right? So within the attribution window of 7 days, or maybe, through, Klaviyo, email marketing, retargeting, etc., these people are already product aware, problem aware, etc. They're already in the funnel. They can then place an order, from traffic that we've generated previously, and that will just, ramp up the return on ad spend because we've lowered the spend. So in this case, let's say we've gone from $2,000 to $10, but we're still getting in the sales from when we did have high spend. that will just, increase the return ad spend drastically. And this is the way agencies also play around with the numbers. Let's say you need to get you've got a ROAS guarantee. Again, that's something that we also do. It's just something that until brands get up to the point where they understand CPA, they understand average order value, they understand lifetime value, it's just an easy way to work off a performance basis for both parties. Let's say a client's got a 50% margin and we just say, okay, let's just leave all the CPA stuff. Let's just work off a 2.5x return ad spend, which is 0.5 points above sort of their break-even ROAS at that point, with that current spend. It's a very easy way to say, okay, that's how we're going to work. That's how we can kind of ensure that you're profitable and we're not just, flush your money down the drain. Now, let's say I really need to get to that 2x or 2.5x return ad spend and we're at a 2.3. I could choose to just turn off the ads for a couple of days, get those sales in because we've got no spend, but we are getting sales in. The ROAS is sky high, and that way we can get a kind of a blended return ad spend over that month or over that period of time, where it's above our KPI, which in this case was 2.5. So there are ways to manipulate the return ad spend, and that is something that, like I said, I want a lot of brands to be careful with. So as I mentioned here as well, why this matters, ROAS naturally decreases at scale as you reach broader, less targeted audiences. So that's obviously one thing you guys need to keep in mind when you initially start the ads. The way the meta algorithm works is it will go for the low hanging fruit. It will sort of get people that are on the verge of placing an order or that were already warm to the idea of placing an order. And obviously, the more you spend, the more that audience will expand, and Meta will try and go out and find new customers for you guys. So at scale, naturally, regardless of sort of the numbers equation, the return ad spend, you will see diminishing returns at scale. So in my opinion, the goal for brands, and in this case, our goal, because this is literally a snippet of our onboarding process, is maximum profit, not maximum return on ad spend. Total profit in dollars is more important than maintaining a high ROAS percentage. We aim for sustainable scaling that maximizes total profit whilst maintaining profitability. And I do obviously need to emphasize that, if let's say you've got a 50% margin and the ROAS is like 1x, but it's like at scale, then still it may not make sense. Now, of course, you've got economies of scale, which means that the more you order with your suppliers, depending on what kind of product it is, naturally, you'll get a better deal. So if I now order, let's say I go to Alibaba and I order one hoodie, it's a sample hoodie, I'm going to pay top dollar for that one hoodie. As opposed to when I buy 10,000 hoodies, naturally, the cost per unit will be lower, and there'll be a larger margin. So there is also a situation where by you spending more, you're able to order more from your supplier, you get a better deal, and that also means that at scale, you can afford a lower return ad spend by default, regardless of this whole situation. We've got that with one of our brands as well. Not our brands, one of our clients' brands that we run ads for. When we first started running her ads, she had a 30% profit margin. So we agreed on a return ad spend of 3 as the ROAS guarantee. Now it's more like a 1.7, 1.8. Again, we've moved away from the ROAS guarantee situation. We work off of a CPA basis. But let's say we had to move back to ROAS, it would basically be a break-even ROAS of 1.7, 1.8 because of economies of scale. She can order more, her supplier gets her a better deal. Okay, so now that you guys understand this, by the way, if you don't, just feel free to leave a comment down below. I'm more than happy to explain it in further detail. What do we need to do? How can we work off of a metric, that is going to ensure profitability? So what I would recommend is working off of a CPA basis. Now, what is CPA? CPA stands for cost per acquisition, or basically the cost per purchase in most e-commerce situations. So let's say this bar represents our average order value. Okay, apologies for my writing. Let's say AOV is 57. Why? That is very random. I know. That is because the average order value for More Life Garments, which is my sandbox brands that I like to test out a lot of stuff before I actually test it for my real clients, is 57. So it makes this a little bit easier. So of the 57, I'll change the color just to show you guys. Of the 57, so when you'll get an order, which in this case, because it's winter, it's usually one hoodie. The hoodie costs around $57. Of that $57, $20 is cost of goods sold. So that's how much it cost me to purchase a hoodie off the supplier. Now, just a quick FYI, it's print on demand. So, there is no economies of scale, basically, because it's just one order each and every time. So, probably, if I do have an absolute best-selling product, I will obviously move to an actual stock. But like I said, it's a sandbox store. It's not an actual store that I want to generate profit from. It's more just to test things out before I test it on my actual clients. So, when I place an order with the supplier, I don't have like any logistics or packaging costs or anything like that. I just have €4 shipping, international shipping. I don't know why I put 2 there. It's 4. There we go. So we've got $24 as like costs when someone places an order, which means that I have €33, if my maths are correct, or $33, I should say, to play around with. So my max CPA is 33, and this is based off of average order value. Once you have enough data to actually do this properly, you can go off of lifetime value. Why? Because when you acquire a customer, that is not to say that that customer will not come back and place another order, because the initial order that person placed was good. They were happy. They had a happy experience. And then without seeing another ad or, without having to pay for that customer again, they'll just naturally come back because the product was so good. So once you've got enough data, you can actually go off of lifetime value, and that might be much higher because, let's say they buy 3 hoodies, or they buy, just to make the math easier, they buy 2 hoodies, which means that the AOV is not 57, it's actually 114. So I'll just put that here just so you guys can remember. So that means that we can actually, so let's say all of this is doubled. That means that we can actually spend up to $66 to acquire a customer, because let's say it costs us $50 to acquire a customer. That means on the front end, it's not actually profitable, but we know that they're going to come back at least one more time, place an order for another hoodie, and then we actually make profit. So that's just something to keep in mind. But let's keep things simple. Let's just say right now you can acquire a customer for $33. This is dollars, by the way. $33. Then we've broken even on the front end. And like I said, if someone then places another order, we can actually make a profit. So let's say, so now our CPA can be $33 or less. Let's say it's 30. So let me just change this color up again. Let's just go for... we'll go for payable. Let's say it's 30. So our CPA, our cost per purchase in the ads, is $30. So we've made $57 in revenue because someone's placed an order for a hoodie. It's cost us $20. The cost of goods sold was $20. We've got $4 in shipping, $30 CPA, which means that our profit on that one order is $3. Now, let's say it doesn't cost us 30, but it costs us, let's say it costs us $40. So our CPA goes up to 40. That means that on the initial order, we've actually made a loss of $7. So what you do in a situation like this, there's 2 things. You can either try and get that CPA down so that it costs you less to acquire that customer, or, which sometimes may actually be easier, especially if your AOV is below 100, is just get the average order value up. Because simply put, if your average order value is not 57, but it's 114, that's they do actually buy two hoodies first time around, because you give them some kind of deal. You've bundled the products. You say, hey, usually it's I don't know, $75 each, but if you buy 2, it's 2 for 114, something like that. So your average order value goes up to 114. It still costs you $40 to acquire that customer. Then you've actually made a profit, as opposed to when the initial order was just one hoodie. So there's those 2 metrics you can play around with: the average order value, cost per acquisition, and then work out for yourself. Or if you're working with an agency that is not us, then tell them to work out what is the easiest route for you guys to get profit. Is it to increase the average order value, which you can do by bundling products, offering a discount when they order more, post-purchase upselling. If you've got products that can complement the initial product, you can upsell them. There's a lot of apps and software that can help you with that. That's obviously a story for a different day, but increase the average order value or decrease the cost per purchase. Now, how do you decrease the cost per purchase? Either increase the conversion rate of the store or run better ads. That's kind of what it comes down to. So we always say to our clients, well, there's like a trifecta, right? You've got your conversion rate, you've got your AOV, and you've got your profit margin. And those are just the variables basically that go into whether a store is profitable or not. So that's kind of what you need to work on. If you've got a very high conversion rate and a very low average order value and a very high profit margin, you may still actually be profitable. So play around with those numbers to figure out a way to generate the highest profitability rather than focusing on return on ad spend, because like I said, return on ad spend is the difference between the revenue generated and your amount spent. So why do we not just go for both, right? That's another question that I often get. Why not have a high ROAS at scale? And like I said, it's economies of scale, and because your ROAS diminishes the more you spend. And by holding out for a high ROAS, you might actually be losing out on money. So let's say, for example, I'm trying to think, how can I quickly showcase this? Let's say we've got a graph, yeah? And this is your ROAS. So ROAS is here, your return on spend, and this is your profit. Okay, and let's say we are currently spending, I don't know, we're here, right? We're here. So this is us. We're spending 20K on ads. Okay, 20K on ad spend. The ROAS in this case is, so that'll be here, is 5. Got a 5x ROAS, which means that you spend 20K. Let's, again, for example, purposes, you've got a 50% profit margin, right? So in this whole situation, 50% profit. So you spend 20K, you've got ROAS of 5, which means you've made 100K in revenue, which means that you've got 50K profit. Hey. Okay. Now let's say we tell you to scale up. You say, no, we need the 5x ROAS. We can't afford a low return on ad spend. Let's say, we twist your arm and you go with it, and we end up spending a lot more than 20K. We end up spending 60K, for example. I'm hoping that the maths actually add up here. So we spent 60K. Your ROAS drops to 3. So we're here now. 60K, ROAS drops to 3, which means that you've got a 180K revenue. And of the 180K revenue, your profit is 90K. Yeah? How do I get 90K? Because 180K, 50% margin. How do I get 60K? Or how do we get 90K, is because we spent 60K and we got a 3x ROAS. Okay, so the difference is 40K. And that is basically the cost of you not scaling up. You've lost or missed out on 40K spend because you're holding out for the 5x ROAS. Whereas in this situation, because you got a 50% margin, a 3x return on ad spend is still profitable. Yes, it's lower than 50K, but you've made 40K more profit. And like I said, at the end of the day, it's about maximizing profitability, not maximizing return on ad spend. So that is the video for today. Any questions on this, please don't hesitate to reach out. Subscribe to the channel for more, and I'll see you guys in the next video.